Well, we are still in the book of Matthew, chapter 9, verse 14. So we're following up immediately off of Jesus talking to the Pharisees after he had called Matthew to be his disciple, and he was there at Matthew's house. And the Pharisees were surprised that he had anything to do with them. And he pointed out to them that I desire mercy and not sacrifice, for I came to not to call the righteous, but sinners to repentance. And, we're going to talk about it tonight in the context of the material we're covering, but it is in the Gospels, and it seems, especially in Matthew, because you've got the lengthy presentation of the Sermon on the Mount, there is the theme, the recurring theme that is there, that in our lives of faith, in our discipleship, following Jesus Christ in this sinful world, that combination, that coming together of truth and truth and deception, light and darkness. Nothing is as it seems. Nothing is as it seems. And we see that there, in that the Pharisees thought they were righteous. They had it absolutely 180 degrees off kilter. They weren't righteous. No one is righteous. So just brought that up, ties in with what we talked about last time, but it also leads into what we are going to look at tonight. And I've got jumpy mouse, so I'll use my keyboard. Got too many things open. So then the disciples of John came to him. So right there, after he's there, or maybe it says then, it's concessive, that right after that exchange with the Pharisees, or closely thereafter, the disciples of John the Baptist, came to him saying, "Why do we and the Pharisees fast, but your disciples do not fast?" I just want to point out a couple things. These are the disciples of John. These were faithful guys, okay? Now, at this point in time, I believe John the Baptist was locked up in prison, but I can't remember for sure. But apart from that, these were followers. They were faithful. They were following John. Some of Jesus' disciples had been John's disciples. They left following him and went to follow Jesus. So these are faithful guys, and they come with a legitimate question. And it's a question about fasting. They're saying the Pharisees fast, and they fast a lot. And actually, that word is in there. They fast much. And another point in the scriptures, the Pharisee said, I fast twice a week, 2 days a week. They would fast, intermittent fasting, before it was about health, although it might have been about health then too. But people fasted, believers fasted, the faithful would fast, and especially disciples who were in that learning process. And I'm not going to go into connection between, depriving yourself of things and focusing on prayer and being in the Word, etc. But all of that was part of it. So these guys were genuinely baffled that Jesus' disciples didn't fast. And Jesus, when you listen to this exchange, as I read it, give heed, look for how he responds to them. He understands the question, I think, is what you're going to see. He understands the question. He just accepts the question, and he doesn't say, that's a good question, but he just explains it to them in a non-confrontational way. They weren't coming at him and telling him he was doing something wrong. They didn't get it. We fast, the Pharisees fast, and understand, I say the word Pharisee, and inside our minds is kind of like we go into a snarl. We kind of Pharisees. They didn't do that. We see them for what they were. The Pharisees were religious leaders. They were looked up to and respected and admired. And we need to remind ourselves of that because we view them with such antipathy. We've got such a negative view of them because of their exchanges with Jesus, but they were not viewed in society that way. They were held in high regard. So they were an example, right? And Jesus said to them, can the wedding guests, there I go jumping again. Use the keyboard, don't use the mouse. And Jesus said to them, can the wedding guests mourn as long as the bridegroom is with them? The days will come when the bridegroom is taken away from them, and they will fast. No one puts a piece of unshrunk cloth on an old garment, for the patch tears away from the garment, and a worse tear is made. Neither is new wine put into old wineskins. If it is, the skins burst, and the wine is spilled, and the skins are destroyed. But new wine is put into fresh wineskins, and both are preserved. Okay. Keep in mind that theme that we started with. Nothing is as it appears. And taking that to a different level, Jesus is a different thing altogether. Jesus being there, the consummation of the plan of salvation throughout the history of the world is there, right there, that guy. And these people are his followers. They're his chosen 12, whom he is instructing. Okay. It's a different thing altogether. That's what the thing about the patch on the cloth is, on the garment, and this new wineskin and old wineskins, new wine and old wineskins is about. And we'll go into that. But he starts with something that to us, it makes sense, right? Can wedding guests mourn as long as the bridegroom is with them? It was against the rules. If you were part of a wedding party, you didn't fast. While that celebration was going on, even if fasting was part of your regular routine, you didn't fast. You weren't supposed to. Teachers, rabbis, when a wedding party would go by, would stop and honor what they were doing and like pay homage and say, yay, hooray. It's a wedding party. It's all about joy and celebration. And culturally, it was a faux pas. It was a no-no that if you were connected with that at all, if it was your second cousin's kid getting married, you didn't fast. So he was just pointing out something again, just like talking about sheep, talking about gardening and mustard seeds, things that they knew, everyday stuff. They knew this stuff. When the bridegroom is with his guys, they don't fast. None of the wedding party does. So can wedding guests mourn as long as the bridegroom is with them? And what do we have? Picture given in scripture again and again. Christ coming to earth is the bridegroom coming for his bride. God in the Old Testament, in the prophets, refers to Israel like she's his bride all the time. And she'd run off and whore after other guys, other gods, right? Familiar spiritual picture. So the bridegroom was with them. The days will come, he says. They're not going to fast now. The days will come when the bridegroom is taken away from them. And there, what is he referring to? John 16:20, the night he was betrayed. He says, truly, truly, I say to you, you will weep and lament, but the world will rejoice. You will be sorrowful, but your sorrow will be turned into joy. Jesus was eventually going to be taken away from them. And at that time, then yeah, things go back more to normal, right? Fasting has been a part of the Christian faith throughout its history, but not when he was there. It was a different thing altogether. Just like when Jesus told the guy, leave the dead to bury their own dead, leave the unbelievers to bury the dead. Come and follow me. You only get one chance. This is it. Come and follow me. So no one puts a piece of unshrunk cloth on an old garment. When was the last time that you patched any of your clothing? Now, some of you will say, yeah, I have them. But for the most part, what do we do with clothes when they get a hole in them? Not the jeans that people buy with holes already in them. What do we do if you know, a pair of pants gets a hole in it? You throw them out. They didn't do that. Things were patched. Things were repaired. This was common stuff. And they knew that if you've got your favorite old tunic that you wore all the time and you put a piece of unshrunk cloth on it and sewed it on, as soon as it got wet, as soon as it was laundered, it was going to pull away because it hadn't shrunk yet, and it would tear it. The picture is you can't take your old way of thinking and apply this new to it. It's different altogether. Everything has changed. I'm here. It's different. Okay. With the wineskins, here, it's putting new wine into old skins. They would put wine in wine skins in leather bags, right? With a kind of lining thing in it. I can't remember exactly how it was they did it. But once you'd used it, you couldn't put new wine in it, because what did new wine do? It would ferment, right? It was doing its wine thing, and it would burst the old wine skins. So it's like you've got this new thing, and think of it like a mind, right? You can't get your mind, the old way of thinking, around this new thing. It calls for new thinking all together. And that's what Jesus does. And this is a good way maybe to sum this up. He changes everything. He changes everything in you. What are we? We are new creatures in Christ. The old is gone, the new is come. We've changed. We don't exist for the reasons that we would exist. We don't pursue the things we would pursue without Christ in our lives. He takes us and he changes us. Everything is looked at differently. Let's go here. Death isn't death. Well, that's a pretty big change. That's a pretty big change. Mourning isn't mourning, not time of day, but mourning loss isn't the same. It's not, mourning isn't really mourning. It's missing. It's separation, but it's not loss. Everything absolutely, completely changes. No matter what I'm going through here, I have the hope of eternity, the hope of salvation. And hope is a sure and certain thing that we just don't have yet. But because it is sure and certain, it changes us. So apply that within the concept of nothing is as it appears. Jesus wasn't as he appeared. He just seemed like a guy. No, he was much, much more. He was God himself, and it changed everything. You can't think about things in the same frame of mind. You have to elevate your thinking. You have to let him reshape, reform the way you think. Paul talks about taking every thought captive, and it's captive to Christ. Changes everything. So immediately, while he's finishing up with this discussion, while he was saying these things, right then, right at that moment, behold, a ruler came and knelt before him, saying, "My daughter has just died, but come and lay your hand on her, and she will live." We'll work our way through this because it's probably more efficient time-wise. We're already 17 minutes in. This ruler, he's some kind of leader, somebody important. He gets the title here of ruler, doesn't tell us who he is. Why doesn't it tell us who he is? That's one of those things we could ponder. I mean, they all knew who this guy was, no doubt. If you're someone they would call a ruler, it's like the mayor of Atlanta or something or whatever. He's an important person. Why doesn't it tell us who he is? Because that's not what's important. Who he is doesn't really matter. The fact that he was someone of lofty position, well, that adds to the narrative here and the message. But this ruler comes and does what? He knelt down. He came and he knelt down before him there in front of everyone. He abases himself, right? He knows that he is the lesser talking to the greater. And I love this guy. He says, "My daughter has just died." Now, I was trying to flip back through and see, I can't remember if in the Gospel of Matthew, Jesus had raised anyone from the dead yet. I think this might be the first one. But this guy comes in, and Jesus has done all kinds of amazing things. He healed from long distance just recently. We saw that. This guy's daughter had died, and what did he do? He went and found Jesus. He went and found Jesus, and his faith, the boldness of what this guy says. "My daughter has just died, but come and lay your hand on her, and she will live." And in the original, there in the Greek, it is every bit as straightforward and bold as what this guy says. He doesn't say, "Can you?" He doesn't say, "Would you?" He is inviting him, but it's a given to him that Jesus can do this. You lay your hand on her and she will live. The boldness that's there. And I kept thinking about the boldness. And you look at Hebrews 4:16, and we've talked about this verse fairly recently. "Let us then with confidence draw near to the throne of grace, that we may receive mercy and find grace to help in time of need." And in the King James and the New King James, rather than confidence, it uses the term boldness, but the two are related, right? Obviously. If you're confident, you come across as being bold. He knew that Jesus could do what he was asking to do. So it's interesting, juxtaposed against what just happened, the disciples of John were confused by the behavior of Jesus' disciples. And I forgot to mention, the reason they asked Jesus about it is the teacher was responsible for the disciples' behavior. He was the one who was supposed to enforce the proper rules and all that stuff. But it's almost, we could say that John the Baptist's disciples didn't really appreciate who Jesus was. And at times we saw that with Jesus' own disciples. If they had really appreciated who he was, they wouldn't have been scared in the boat with the storm, right? I oftentimes don't appreciate who Jesus is. If I always fully appreciated who Jesus is, you know what would be absent in my life? Fear. There would be none. Worry, stress. There would be none of those things if I fully, regularly, constantly appreciated who Jesus was. Well, this guy knew who Jesus was, and he came to him and said, "My daughter died, but come and lay your hand on her, and she will live." And Jesus' response is what? He got up and he went. He didn't, there's no conversation recorded. Not saying that he didn't say anything, but he didn't ask him anything. This guy was bold. He came right to him, said, "Come and my daughter will live." Jesus rose and followed him with his disciples. And behold, a woman who had suffered from a discharge of blood for 12 years came up behind him and touched the fringe of his garment. For she said to herself, "If I only touch his garment, I will be made well." Now, it's interesting that these things get paired together the way they do. It's by design, by God, that in both of these instances, concurrently, he's the leaders talk to him, he's on his way. This woman who has been bleeding for 12 years. For 12 years. Now, there's something else with that, because this is a female thing, right? And I think it's Luke who said she spent all her money on physicians and couldn't get healed. And Luke's the physician, interestingly. She was ceremonially unclean. 12 years. 12 years, there was that separation from anything pertaining to worship. And what did she want to do? All she wanted to do was touch the fringe of his garment. She knew that if she did, I will be made well. She didn't wonder. It doesn't say that she thought, well, maybe, possibly, if I just touch him, I'll be made well. No. If I can only touch his garment, I will be made well. Boldness. Boldness. We need to be bold. We should be bold in approaching God, not telling him what to do, but trusting that he'll do what's best, trusting that he wants us to come to him, knowing how we will be received, and knowing that what he does is best for us, and it always will be best for us. Jesus turned, and seeing her, and in the other Gospels, it says that he knew power went out from her, because he said, "Who touched me?" And his disciples said, "What are you talking about? There's this huge thronging crowd here, and you ask who touched you." He said, "No, someone touched me because I felt power go out from me." He said to her, "Take heart, daughter. Your faith has made you well." And instantly the woman was made well. What does he call her? Daughter. Take heart, daughter. She'd been ceremonially unclean, kind of ostracized from matters of worship and all of that for 12 years. And in this tender name that he uses for her, he calls her daughter, family, acceptance. He didn't say woman, he said daughter. It's just kind of a touching picture. Your faith has made you well. And instantly, the woman was made well. Now, it's interesting. Here it says made well, healed, all of those things. The word that is used is also, it's right here. To save or free from disease. It's also the word that's used to be saved, as in salvation, right? Like we're set free from the affliction of sin and its consequences. Just like she was set free, saved from the disease and its consequences. And it really fits in, I've been blessed to not have a whole lot wrong with me for most of my life health-wise, but there was a time I was really, really, really sick. And if you're really, really, really sick for a really, really long time and it just gets worse and worse and worse, you get used to it. And then in my situation, I was blessed to get relief. And all of a sudden, I went from being in constant pain and misery to having none. And I couldn't believe how good I felt. I felt like I'd been saved from something. And I realized how sick I'd been, which my wife had been telling me the whole time how sick I was. And my response was, no, I'm fine. I'm fine. But that concept of being set free, it's such a burden. You get used to carrying it, bearing up under it, dealing with it, and then it's gone. And I like to think of that as, here, point is, this woman was really suffering. She had this going on for 12 years, and she was set free from it. She was saved from it. Instantly, that happened. But there's a picture there, because it's also the word used for saved. He saved me, same word, of the freedom that we experience in part now and will experience fully there. I can't imagine what it is like to go from here with the burden of sin and the struggle that my own sin and this sinful world and Satan put me through all the time, to being completely free from it. It's gone. It's gone. There is an analogy there. Got to keep going. And when Jesus came to the ruler's house and saw the flute players in the crowd making a commotion, there was a mourning process that went on, and they did it much better than we do. When someone dies, we all try to pretend like, well, we're doing okay. They didn't. They just bawl, wail, and cry. And there was music with it and everything. They dealt with it. It was probably a much healthier way of dealing with things than the way most of us deal with things. And he said to them, go away. And it's just that blunt. He doesn't say, no, you don't need to do that. It follows the theme of the boldness with which this man came to him. And listen to what else he says. He said, go away. Sal de aquí in Spanish. Get out of here. Go away. The girl is not dead, but sleeping. When Jesus goes to act, when Jesus goes to change something, it's already done. It's already done. There's a thing called the prophetic perfect. The prophets would talk about things that were to come as though they'd already happened. And that's exactly the way Jesus is talking here. He tells them to go away because there's no need. There's no need. She's not dead because I'm here. Now, she was still dead. She was cooling off in the other room there, right? But she wasn't dead because Jesus was there. And they laughed at him. But when the crowd had been put outside, wanted everybody else out, he went in and he did exactly what the guy asked. He said, just touch her. Just put your hand on her, and he does more. He took her by the hand. Again, he called the woman daughter. Here, he takes her by the hand. He doesn't just touch her and say, okay, whoop, you're better. He takes her by the hand. There is that invitation, that bringing her in, right? He took her by the hand, and the girl arose. And the report of this went through all that district. I bet it did. I bet it did. Okay, we got to stop there. Our time is up. That concludes our broadcast for today. We publish our videos on YouTube, BitChute, and Brighteon. We hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please give us a like or a thumbs up. We invite you to subscribe so you can continue to receive our content. Also, please consider sharing this video with others. We love to hear from you, so please leave a comment below. This is Matthias 76, and together we will continue to decode the deception.